Hello, this is Joe from Nerd in Korea. We're starting a new series I'm calling Deck Check-In, where I take a look at some of my friends' decks. I think I'm going to put my decks on here as well, and kind of look at maybe what can be changed, or in this case, not much. To be honest, this is a Tiamat deck that my friend Ollie has. It's well, earlier this week it was over 1,600 on TCG Player, and still currently over 2,100 on Card Kingdom. So it's not cheap. You can find it in the description if you're interested in checking it out though. So this is going to be a new series where we take a look at some of my friends' decks, as I said. Today we're looking at what is a well-funded deck can look like for a change. Again, I usually do all budget stuff, so this is a big change. Looking at a very pricey deck is very different. First, we will look at some of the standout cards in the deck. Next, we will look at how the deck plays and what the plan is, the early game, and how it wins, right? So what do you want to do with the deck? What's the game plan in general? And finally, I will try to make some suggestions. My plan A was this was going to be a major part of it, but in this deck, frankly, I couldn't come up with much anyway. Alright. So the deck price right now on TCG Player is $1,584.34. Again, it was over 1,600 on Tuesday even, so it's dropped a bit. It dropped under 1,600, oh no. But anyway, still over 2,100 on Card Kingdom, so oh boy. Anyway. Well, I usually cover budget decks and cards. This is not by any definition. Again, this is, as I said, the TCG Player value, and the Card Kingdom one is significantly more. There are many high-priced decks available on Moxfield and things like that. I feel like they're not really the same thing as this, because this is an actual deck that someone owns, that they have put together over years, right? This isn't something where someone went online and was like, hey, let's make an expensive deck and just like threw it together on Moxfield, you know? I think there are a lot of those. This is not the same thing, and I think you can tell by how much, like, really careful thought has gone into this, I think. So yeah, it is a very different kind of deck. But anyway, yeah. Decks like these are more interesting because they are so carefully considered and even more dangerous when piloted by their designer. And I played against this, and oh my gosh, let me tell you, I don't feel so bad that it stomped me so many times now, but anyway, I think I played against it twice, so maybe I shouldn't say so many, but anyway. Again, the commander is Tiamat, okay? A WUBERG commander, Dragon Kindred, very Dragon Kindred. The ETB is search your library for 5 different dragon cards. They do have to be different ones. I think that's supposed to be a limitation in some, in some formats that would be. In Commander, with the singleton rule where you can only have one of each card, that's just a given. That's not even a limitation really. That's just 5 dragons and play them. Ooh. Alright, first of all, we're going to look at some of the star cards in the deck. Alright, first we will look at some of the standout cards in the deck, which is hard with this deck because they are all almost standout cards, right? When a deck costs this much, I think it's hard to find a really good one. Here I will focus mainly on the Dragon Kindred synergies in the deck. So just to narrow it down, basically I'm going to look at the Dragon Kindred synergies. I think that is kind of the most important thing in the deck anyway, so yeah. Seems like a good choice. Ancient Copper Dragon, first of all. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20, create that number of treasure tokens. Oof, oof. Again, this is like a $50 cards, but it's still amazing. Next up, we have the Ancient Gold Dragon. Once again, when it does damage, roll a d20 and create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon tokens. So you've got treasure tokens, 1/1 flying blockers if you want them. And then Ancient Silver Dragon lets you roll a d20 and draw that many cards. So you got your ramp and your card draw already sorted on those two. Old Gnawbone. Whenever a creature you control deals damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. So anytime a creature does damage to a player, not even combat damage, just damage, you're making that many treasure tokens, which this deck is very good at doing, just like damage to players automatically. So yeah, just crazy synergy there. And finally, Imrith, Desert Doom. When this, so it has ward 4 as long as it's untapped, and when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If you have fewer cards than 3 cards in hand, draw the difference. So basically, yeah, if you have 0 cards in hand, he deals damage, you draw 1 card, and then you draw 2 more. So you have 3 in hand. It's a very good thing to have. It's stronger than it sounds, I think. I had this on Arena, and it was amazing. So again, another dragon here. This can't be countered, which is nice, and it has lifelink, but your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Blue Shenanigans just shut down right there, right? In the right deck, or against the right deck, I suppose you'd probably choose this as one of your tutors, but anyway. Atarka, World Render, gives all of your dragons double strike. Whenever a dragon attacks, it gains double strike. Oh. And Hellkite Charger, for 7 mana, you can untap all attacking creatures, and after this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. So you can just keep making extra combat phases if you feel like. Ugh. And this doesn't even say only once per turn or anything. Oh boy. Miriam, Sentinel Worm. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it. Except the token isn't legendary if that dragon is legendary. Lots of legendary dragons in this deck, and you're just like copying them and making the copies not legendary. Oh, so brutal. And Scion of Draco. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control, and each creature you control has Vigilance if it's white, Hexproof if it's blue, Lifelink if it's black, First Strike if it's red, and Trample if it's green. Just a whole pile of extra abilities for a lot of these dragons are more than one color, so you're going to get a whole bunch of usefulness out of that. The plan. Okay, next up we're looking at the plan. So how does this deck play? Step 1, ramp. Step 2, Tiamat's tutor. Again, just casting your commander as step 2. Step 3, win. Might sound overly simplistic, but it does the job. Early game, so there's only one main thing this deck wants to do, and that is ramp and color fix, right? Ramping, color fixing. Luckily, it is something the deck is very good at. Ramp, emphasize getting out, when ramping, emphasize getting out the triomes and cards that allow you to produce multiple colors of mana, basically that help with color fixing, right? So ramp and color fixing are very intertwined here, as they usually are, I guess, but anyway, more so with triomes. So some of our ramp and color or mana fixing cards, Sky Shroud Claim. Search your library for up to 2 forest cards, put them into the battlefield, and then shuffle. So something to point out about this, which most people are probably aware of, this says forest, not basic, right? Any forest, any triome will have those basic land types listed, and if forest is one of them, you can take the triome out. That's why this is really amazing. Spoils of Victory. Again, it lets you search for different things. So again, if you're looking for something that doesn't have the forest keyword, this is very useful. And then you shuffle your library after. Yeah, sure. Smothering Tithe. Oh boy. Anyway, whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If they don't, you create a treasure token. So it's, yeah, taxing your opponents or you get treasure. Oh, really hard choice there. Bloom Tender. For each color amongst permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So as soon as you cast your commander, Bloom Tender taps for all 5 colors. Oof, oof, oof. Again, that ramp and mana fixing or color fixing going hand in hand very much with Bloom Tender. And of course, Dockside Extortionist, because, you know, you just gotta be super mean. Anyway, yeah. He makes X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts on the battlefield. Artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Sorry. Artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Just, oof. Tiamat Tutor. So when you cast Tiamat, what are you looking for? First, Old Gnawbone, again dealing damage and making treasure tokens with any creature. Amazing ability. Ramp right there. Terror of the Peaks. Whenever you cast another creature, or whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. Any target part is the really dangerous bit there. As you can imagine, this plays a part in some win cons right there. Earthquake Dragon. Costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of dragons you control. I'm kind of blocking it there, but I believe it's, 14. So if you have 14 power in dragons on the battlefield, again, if just those two is 7 and 5 already. So this would cost 3 to cast. Very easily, you're going to cast it for 1 green only. And Scion of Draco. We already talked about that one. One last point I'd like to make about Domain. Domain does not specify basic land, right? It's land types. Basic land type. The triomes have the land types. They don't say basic. It doesn't have to say basic, it just has to say the land type. So basic land type, I think, is kind of a confusing one, but yeah. Triomes absolutely do count. So every triome would be -3. If you have 1 triome even, it's -3 to the casting cost of this boy here. And the Dragon, or Scion of the Dragon, sorry. So for 2, you could search your library for a dragon permanent card, put it into your graveyard, and then this becomes a copy of that, basically. So it's almost like another tutor. And he's going to probably become Ancient Silver Dragon. So when you deal combat to a player, or combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to the result, right? You roll a d20, you're just drawing a bunch of cards. There's your card draw, all sorted, probably. It's a very easy way to get like a lot. Really, you're fixing whatever problem you have at the time, you can fix with something here, right? Ramp, cards, damage, whatever you want, you're going to be able to do it. Counters. So let's look at some of the counters in the deck. Fierce Guardianship. This is one where I was like, I know I should get this when it comes out, but I didn't, and now it's like $50 or something. I think it's like 45. Anyway, if you control your commander, you may cast the spell without paying its mana cost. Oof. Counter target non-creature spell. Even if you do pay for it though, it's 3. It's not heartbreaking. Heroic Intervention. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Again, all permanents, not just creatures. Any kind of board wipe, especially there's board wipes that will like destroy artifacts or enchantments, you can protect all of them. Crux of Fate. Technically this is a board wipe, but it's a board wipe that you can use to destroy everything except for all non-dragon creatures, right? It's what you're going to be blowing up. So kind of like the best defense is a good offense kind of thing. deflecting SWAT, any kind of target removal or anything, you're just going to be like change the target of. And once again, if you control your commander, cast it for free. Oy. Finally, Teferi's Protection, which is kind of just like a note, right? You're just out of the game for one turn. It's kind of like flipping the table, but you don't flip the table, you just stay sitting there. But everyone treats you like you're not there anyway. But yeah, you can't get board wiped, you can't get anything. It's just like, I'm peacing out, I'm taking a 5-minute here, everyone leave me alone. Yeah, just crazy. Cost reduction up next here. So again, Scion of Draco reduces his own costs. Urza's Incubator you can use to reduce the cost of all dragons. Again, when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. It's going to be dragons. Reduce the cost of all dragons by 2. That's crazy. Scion of Draco you can play for free if this is out, right? Got all your land types and Scion of Urza's Incubator. Boom. Free Scion of Draco. Anyway, the Great Henge. Again, this costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. This is 7 green. There are dragons that have 7 attack power, so you're going to cast for green, and right away you can tap it for green and gain 2 life. Basically for free, right? For free with extra steps. But anyway, Earthquake Dragon. This costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of dragons you control. Once again, we talked about this. 14, the total mana value being 4. Even if Scion of Draco is out there, you can use this to reduce it by 12. That's crazy. And you can return them to hand if you want as well. Because, why not? And Morphodon, finally. So, when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and you get Wooburg Rebate, right? All of your that kind of creature, you're going to get a reduction of all the colors. So again, if something has like 4, say green-blue, you don't pay the green-blue. Or if it was green-green, you have to pay 1 green, but anyway. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Oi, yeah. Because you need extra. He's got to do extra, obviously. WinCon 1, we got Terror of the Peaks. And March of the Ents. Okay, so, March of the Ents, remember, draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So if you've got Silver Dragon, you've got like a pile of cards. Hopefully you've got something that lets you just have no limit to your hand size. There are things that do that in this deck. And then you're going to just cast this with Tear the Peaks out and just... He draws cards and then he doesn't care if it's like you drew those creatures. It's just if the creature's in your hand. You're going to keep putting them all down and just auto damage until everything is dead. Taking a player out, pretty easy. Probably taking 2 players out, even at max health, I think would be very possible. WinCon number 2, Lausanne, Dragon's Legacy. Whenever you cast an adventure spell or a dragon spell, this deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. Again, any target that isn't a commander is a player, right? So again, we got that player removal. The best removal is player removal, remember? So you're going to cast something like Earthquake Dragon or Scion of Draco. The reduction in casting cost doesn't matter to this, right? So even if you cast Earthquake Dragon for 1 mana, you're still doing 15 damage to whatever you want. Just insane. And then, kind of in the same vein, we have Dragon Tempest. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage, where X is the number of dragons you control. So just getting lots of dragons down is going to do more and more and more damage. And then Scion of Valkas. And whenever another dragon enters your control, it deals X damage to a target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. So once again, both of these kind of do the same thing, but you can have them both out at the same time. Just a whole pile of damage, a whole pile. Okay, suggestions. Now I'm getting to suggestions. This is very difficult with a deck that is well played, carefully considered, and well funded. This really, he's been building this deck over like years. I think more than 5 years he spent putting this deck together. So yeah, it was carefully considered and assembled and played at every step, right? It's not like he just threw this together and started playing it. He made the original deck and just has been upgrading. This makes for a much stronger deck, particularly with the designer or pilot, or the designer as the pilot of the deck. It's really, the person really knows it inside and out. I have an Orzhov deck that's kind of like that. Not at all close to the price, but it is like, it's definitely a lot stronger because I know it inside and out. I know it so well that it's scary, yeah. So very few cards that may be replaceable in the deck. Usually I would think this is going to be the biggest part of the episodes, but this is very short here. This is the hardest part of this deck because everything really does have a role and play an important part mechanically. Yeah, there's no real wasted cards in the deck, so what I've found is minimal. Replaceable cards. So, yeah. First of all, the Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind. It is actually quite good. You tap it for 1 red mana. 1 red, but it gives the dragon you cast with it gets haste. Haste is the very important thing in this deck. That's worth it. You do have other sources of haste, is the only reason I have this on the list. Still not an ideal cut, right? He has 2 enchantments that can give haste. One that's haste and one that's riot, I guess. So yeah, still be better to have not all your eggs in one basket, right? Have enchantment, artifact, and something else. Wood is probably better, much safer. Utopia Scrawl. So when it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever Enchanted Forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. Extra mana fixing is what this is really all about. There's other ways to do that, and there's a ton of mana fixing in here already, so do you need this? I guess this would be one. It's still useful, but is it like, do you really need it? I guess is the one thing. Arcane Signet. I think this is the only card where I'd say you really could switch this with something better. The other two, I'm on the fence. I probably wouldn't even change them, but anyway, okay, here we go. Again, changing the Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind with Analyze the Pollen. I love Analyze the Pollen. As an additional cost of the spell, you may collect Evidence 8. And collect Evidence 8 is exile cards at total amount value 8 or greater from your graveyard. Again, with dragons, that's very easy to do, right? It doesn't take a whole lot of dragons to make 8 casting cost. Probably 2 of anything. You can exile, and then this acts as a tutor for creatures. Usually you find a basic land. This deck only has 2 basic lands, so this is really not a great thing to suggest, but and a tutor, the commander tutors. So yeah, and Scion of the Erd Dragon sorta tutors, but anyway. So do you need this? Probably not. I might just stick with the haste. Anyway, Utopia Sprawl. Yeah, changing this with mechanized production is an idea, at least. You can cast mechanized production on like some kind of mana generator, and then or mana rock, I mean, and then is making duplicates of that, and then as soon as you have 10 treasures, which this deck makes very easily, on the next upkeep you win the game. It's kind of a cheap win con for this deck though, so I'd see why you wouldn't want that, honestly. I think it's kind of a good thing this deck doesn't have it. Anyway, actually I kind of admire this deck for not having that. Anyway, alright. And finally, Arcane Signet for Chromatic Lantern. I feel like this is the only one that might actually be worth doing. The other ones are like possibilities, but I wouldn't really suggest it. This is the one where I think, yeah, this is actually an upgrade. Again, Arcane Signet, its main thing is that it costs 2. It's a mana rock that can make 1 of any color and costs only 2 instead of 3. 1 extra mana. Let's see what the 1 extra mana does. Lands you control have add 1 mana of any color. So it gives everything, or all the lands, add 1 mana of any color. This deck does have the World Tree as well. Is the World Tree not a better version of this? Yes. Yes, it is. Oh, okay. Anyway. Still, it's nice to have 2 things that do, like, kind of all the mana fixing you want. Once this is out, it's kind of like you stop caring about mana at all. And it's nice to have a backup. A secondary World Tree, maybe. Okay. Final thought. Okay. This is a very expensive, high-powered deck, but it does not really mess with other people's games. I think a lot of times when you look at these decks that are very pricey, they're decks that really, I think, end up stealing something from other people. There's no land destruction, no forced discard, sneaky win cons that can feel a bit cheap at times. I definitely use some alternate win cons. I wouldn't I'm not trying to say anything bad about using them, but it does sometimes catch you off guard and you're kind of like, oh, so the game's over now. All right. This is very it's all damage, you know? It's not sneaking up and pulling any tricks. It's just kind of, you look at the commander and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get punched until, it's over. While being a very strong deck, this is very fun to play against. So a lot of decks where some people have put the money in, again, I feel like they're not fun to play against those decks. This is fun to play against. I had no idea how valuable it was. I have played against this. It is a lot of fun still. You're not sitting there going, oh, I have to discard all of my cards every turn or some nonsense like that. Anyway, all right, take it easy.